You know, I'm actually kind of glad that I had to start this game over. 13 years later and Soul Silver is still really good. Well, I guess it's time to finally finish what I started and talk about the one and only Pokémon Home. But before that, it kind of makes me wonder how my last video did. Let's check up on that. Oh my god. On November 10th, 1975, the Great Lakes freighter known as the Edmund Fitzgerald sank near Whitefish Bay within Lake Superior due to a nasty storm. The wind levels of this storm caused the waves to reach up to 35 feet or 11 meters, and by the time the clock struck 7 p.m., the ship's bow plunged into the lake and the entire crew unfortunately perished with it. Truly a tragedy, and one that hits very close to home for me as someone within the Great Lakes maritime industry. Every year, the academy I graduated from holds a memorial open to the public, honoring the 29 crew members who passed away during the tragedy. Now, don't worry, as someone who's actually in that industry, I have zero intention of making any jokes or goofs or gags, and I intend to treat the Edmund Fitzgerald with the respect that it deserves, which is why I'm ending the story there. I bring it up only as a backstory because I want to hold a small little memorial of my own. Nothing compared to the Edmund Fitzgerald, that's actually serious, but you know. You see, as of the uploading of this video to YouTube, the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShop have closed their store shutters for good. We talked about this during the transfer tour video, but it's absolutely still relevant to this video too. Regardless of when you decide to watch this video, day of, months later, multiple watches, it doesn't matter. I've decided to take this brief moment to honor the games and apps that the Nintendo 3DS store provided us with every time you watch this video, since legally, we don't have a way to directly download them onto our 3DS anymore. I talked about the consequences of this situation in my last video, and while the loss of the eShop isn't all that connected to this video, we'll be talking about the future stuff, today's stuff. I'd be lying if I said the Pokemon isn't affected by the loss. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a bell. Alright, you'll do just fine. I also don't have a bell mallet, so this Nerf Wii Sports baseball bat will have to do. Don't judge me, I have a small budget. Well, here's to honor more than a decade of games that were available to one of the most popular gaming consoles of all time. I have nothing but respect for Nintendo and the amount of effort that they put into their games. It's been a great run, but the era of the 3DS is over. Gone, but never forgotten. Thank you, Nintendo, for your constant appreciation and care towards your customer base and fan base. Now, Game Freak, on the other hand, I have damn near zero respect for. Especially after how they've been treating their fan base. So let's just ring my bronzong one more time in honor of Game Freak's ruined reputation, having witnessed their continuous kerfuffle that is Scarlet and Violet myself.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Turns out, I missed a few neat tidbits during the Pokemon transfer tour, thanks to all of you that let me know. Let's go over them real quick like. So I never actually owned a Nintendo 64, nor did any friends that I have that did possess the tools to be able to do this, but you can in fact transfer Pokemon into Red and Blue. And it includes a bonus storage system too, right up our alley. In order to do this, you need something called, what is that? Nintendo 64 Transfer Pack. Probably costs like $1,000 in today's market. But with this gadget, you can move Pokemon from Red, Blue, and Yellow into Pokemon Stadium and then back into the Game Boy whenever you want them back. Like, duh, right? The whole watch and battle with your own Pokemon on the big screen thing was a huge deal. To be honest, I shouldn't have forgotten that. I would have been all over this game if I had a Nintendo 64. So yeah, sorry for not mentioning them. Also yes, I know about the Switch re-upload, and yes, I am thumbing my nose at that version. What's the point if you can't do what the game was originally advertised for? I intentionally skipped over this one because one of the multiple scripts I had planned was actually for this game, but I'll be brief and talk about it anyway. This game connected to all the Gen 4 mainline games, but rather than directly transferring Pokemon to the game, you're just duplicating the Pokemon and then sending over those duplicates to be used in place of the genuine Pokemon themselves. Frankly, I'm shocked we haven't seen more of that technique given how helpful it is, though I do get to an extent why they haven't tried again. This was essentially Pokemon Stadium 3, and I'm of the opinion that this game is fun and a worthy successor to Stadium 1 and 2. Sword and Shield be damned, Battle Revolution is way better. In case you didn't know, the YouTube Gopier did what was once thought to be impossible. The man literally bridged the gap between Gen 2 and Gen 3 and transferred a Pokemon from Johto to Hoenn. Like, I don't need to explain how huge that is. Instead, I'll just put a link to his video in the description. Truly a shame that he's the only one capable of doing this, but as far as progress, I'm more than willing to celebrate. And that's all I have to offer in terms of what I missed. Yeah, there are a few things that you guys mentioned besides what I talked about, but at this rate, this video is going to be just as long, if not longer, than the Pokemon Transfer Tour. So, let's just get a move on, shall we? During that last video, I talked about as many different ways as I could about shifting your Pokemon from game to game, from generation to generation, and at the end, I even talked a little bit about Pokemon Bank. There's no real set order that needs to be followed for these videos to make sense, so if you happen to not see that video yet, you won't miss any real context watching this one first. In this video, me and all the Pokemon that I've brought with me so far will be saying farewell to Bank and making that last jump into the latest and possibly greatest Pokemon storage system available to us, Pokémon Home. And everything to do with it, good and bad. That was your only warning, by the way. I'm going to try to avoid talking about the controversial subject matter as best as I can, just like I did before. But if I need to talk about something in order to prove a point or provide full context, I have no choice. If you love something dearly, you don't have to loyally follow it without question. When something you love makes a huge mistake, multiple times, you should be allowed to call them out on it. But that's all I'll say on that. I hope you enjoy this video. After its announcement was made in May of 2019, it was only a few months after the worldwide release of Sword and Shield that Pokémon Home was made available for all trainers to use. In 2020. Yep, 2020. And you all know what that means! Now there's a history lesson for ya! Now, alongside all that shebang, this was during the time where 50% of Pokemon's audience was still at odds with the company's recent announcements. And a lot of people did not see Pokémon Home as, well, a home for Pokemon. Okay, how do I word this without getting eviscerated or cancelled? Screw it. Given that Pokemon Sword and Shield were enforcing the Dex cut Disputed Digital Division during and after the release of Pokemon Home, it quickly dawned on people that moving Pokemon from Bank or Go into that software was perhaps not the smartest move to make. At the time of Home's release, only 2 sets of Pokemon games were able to connect to the software, the Galar games and the Let's Go games. Of those 2 sets of games, only one set allows Pokemon to move back and forth, Sword and Shield. And then within those 2 games, only 400 Pokemon were available in the base game, and only those 400 Pokemon could be transferred into Sword and Shield. When it comes to Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, only Pokemon caught in those games can be put into Let's Go using Home. In simpler words, the only Pokemon you can transfer into Let's Go are Pokemon that came from Let's Go in the first place. And another thing, if I were to take my own Melmetal from Let's Go Eevee and move it over to a Sword or Shield game, then Home wouldn't allow me to put it back into Let's Go, as Melmetal's code for Let's Go would be overridden with the Gen 8 code and then would only be allowed in Gen 8 from then on. That last part's nothing new, by the way. A similar coding rule existed during the bank era between moving Pokemon from Generation 6 to 7. Once a Mon reached the Alola games, they couldn't return to Kalos. Clearly Pokemon wasn't thinking that far ahead, but at least they thought far enough ahead to enact a... Oh my god. Who cares about Galar's Border Patrol? At this point, we'll be in Gen 9 by the time this video goes up.
Nobody even wants you here.
While we're seeing a similar situation here in the Switch era, it's a little more sinister in Home, however, especially back during those first few months. Riddle me this, Batman. What happens to a Pokemon brought over from Bank-O-Go, whose code doesn't exist in Sword and Shield? Obviously, you can't move Pokemon back to Bank from Home, like I needed to explain that. So the major concern that many people had is, why send Pokemon to a program that locks them in place and can't be used anymore? Yeah, maybe a Pokemon game will be released where that Pokemon will become usable, but what if such a game doesn't come out anytime soon? How long will it take before that Pokemon is finally usable again? Will that be the only game this Pokemon can be used in? How will we know? For example, I sent my favorite Pokemon ever to Pokemon Home from Bank, with the hope being that Pokemon will eventually release a game where I can use the poor poodle. Guess the banana what? Sword and Shield, Faithful Diamond and Faithful Pearl, Legends Arceus, and now Scarlet and Violet. And still, nothing. Furfrou is one of the lucky few that is still locked in Home and can't leave to be used in any game. People don't like this term, but if that's not a living example of the slang Pokemon prison, then what is it?
Garbage!
Yeah, as you can see, initial reception of this application was a little mixed, and many people on the internet straight up refused to download this software. Or at least that's what they were claiming. Hard to know for sure who was telling the truth there or not. I wasn't completely against the idea of Home myself, but with most of my favorites on my team not being available in Sword and Shield, and from there only certain Pokemon can be brought to certain games in the future, why split my beloved main team apart from my Alolan games where I can actually use them there together as intended? If you're wondering what caused me to have somewhat of a change of heart and at least give the app a chance, well, besides giving me an excuse to make this video, it was because of this. Pokemon Home has been out for a while, and I'm not going to pretend that it's an unpopular software. My goal here is to explain it as best as I can. However, I'm sure most people who will watch this video already own Pokemon Bank, so I promise to at least make it entertaining.
You know, you don't have to be here for the whole video. You can go back to your ball if you want to.
Continuing on with our history lesson, Pokemon Home was advertised as a place where our Pokemon can be safe. Cloud service, always a risk, but fine. We can bring our Pokemon to different games for use. And the whole experience will be like coming home after adventuring in another region.
In regards to that last tick, no.
The Pokemon Company was more or less comparing Home's worth to Professor Oak's pastures in the anime, where all of Ash's Pokemon can relax in paradise until the time for battle returns. I don't like speaking for a large group, but am I seriously supposed to believe that everyone else thinks Home is to be compared to that level of freedom? I somehow doubt that.
Looking up that level of freedom on Google, and I do not see Pokemon Home. I see Pokemon Ranch. Now look, there are plenty of ways to make the app more homey and make it feel more like Professor Oak's pastures in the anime. But that's not what this video is about. Let's not kid ourselves. Pokemon Home is just Pokemon Bank, but designed by another company.
That company is Ilka. You know, those guys?
As I was saying, the universe is just doomed.
I'm not one that likes to jab at small indie developers, but I'm sorry, it's one thing to hire a dev team like Ilka for small spin-off projects, something that could match the size of its studio. But for Game Freak to have them be the team to work on these Gen 4 rehashes comes off to me as standoffish? Nah, we don't want to work on the most anticipated pair of games of the decade. Let's just dump them on that little group that made Pokemon Home!
These are faithful remakes of the Pokemon Diamond version and Pokemon Pearl version games.
These games will be developed by Ilka Inc., who also worked on Pokemon Home. The project is being directed by Yuichi Ueda of Ilka, as well as Game Freak's Junichi Masuda, who was the director for the original Pokemon Diamond version and Pokemon Pearl version games.
And everything of value was lost! Look, I'm trying to have a positive outlook, but Game Freak has been really pissing a lot of people off recently. I can't just turn the other cheek.
Like I said, I'm all for giving indie devs a chance. However, Pokémon Home was intended to be the system to help store Pokémon and move them around from core game to core game. Call me crazy, but it might be more of a wise decision to have Game Freak take the helm for this project. I don't know, it just seems like maybe using the team that made 99% of all core Pokémon games up to this point might have a bit of an easier time making software that connects to every single modern Pokémon game, which, in case you didn't hear me the first time, 99% of which were made by Game Freak. If a rookie dev team was placed in charge, it seems that quite a bit of difficult situations may arise. Just a hunch I've got. But fine, whatever. Ilka designed and programmed Pokémon Home. If it turns out I like how they did, then I guess I like how they did.
There are two versions of Home at our disposal. The version of Home where you pay, and the version of Home that you can use for free. Since I haven't paid for the service yet, this would make a great opportunity to see what you can and cannot do if you're unsure about taking that huge $16 step. I am not a rich man. I have to play my cards in a thrifty manner, so anyone saying, "Come on, just buy it, bro. It's totally worth it, bro," needs to be quiet. If a game or software is trash and it costs money, people deserve the right to choose their purchases. Use this experience I'm performing for you all as a stepping stone of sorts. If you think you'll actually use and/or like the software, then whether or not you buy the yearly subscription is up to no one but you. Or your parents if you're under 15. By the way, to you kids at home, I swear a lot. I'm trying to curb that habit, but sailor speak is really hard to break out of. Let's make life a bit easier on ourselves here and start with the Nintendo Switch. Wait, is there another software that houses Pokémon Home? Yes. Stay tuned.
What do I owe you? Nothing. It's for free. Free?
First, let's go over the Switch version at a $0 cost. Right away, we got an improvement over Bank. It actually gives us a menu to work with instead of just throwing us into the storage system. They also gave us a separate menu for the Pokédex, which I'm thankful for. We're going to be in the boxes for a while, so let's start there. Let's get the biggest nerf out of the way right away. There's no grouping this time. All the boxes that we were given will remain interconnected for life, which definitely sucks because now there's no clean way to categorize Pokemon with different roles into different positions. They're all sharing a single lunch table. There is a workaround to this, but there's no real fix to this problem, as I'll discuss later. Visually, Pokémon Home on the Switch leaves a lot to be desired. It stands tall and proud above Pokémon Bank, that's for sure. We actually get some good art for every Pokémon when looking at their stats screen, but outside of that, it's identical to Bank. Which, I guess that was the point, but again, I was hoping for more of a gallery of sorts. Nothing too crazy, but more than just what's on the back of a basic baseball card, you know? There's also a function from this menu that lets you view what games the Pokémon is available for use in. Obviously, I'm not a fan of this function.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Unlike in Bank, with Home you don't have to connect with any particular game to organize your Pokemon. The option to jump in is right there, which was one of my biggest hopes for this app, so thank you Ilka, that was a nice gesture. I also found out later after I finished recording that Home connects to the Switch memory, so you don't need any cartridges to move Mons around. If you're wondering why I have these two games on file, it's because Sissy was kind enough to let me borrow those games to earn rewards in Legends Arceus. I didn't actually play those games, nor do I want to. Moving along to transferring Pokemon around, it's pretty much the same way as it was in Bank. Pick up, shift over, put down, easy as that. Remember, while you can move Pokemon back to Let's Go, Pikachu, or Eevee if you had them sitting in Home, you cannot return them to Let's Go if you had put them in a different game like Sword or Legends Arceus. I'm not joking, I tested it. Oh my god, I hate this game. Something I noticed right away was that the positioning of the 5 Pokemon I brought over from Let's Go Eevee got jumbled slightly when I left the transfer menu. Rather than being slotted in the second row where I had placed them, everyone got shifted to the top. Not only that, but everyone's positions also got jumbled around. Squirtle and Pikachu, which were given to me as gifts for starting the game up, were suddenly slotted behind my Let's Go team. And that didn't really look right to me, so I went back and switched them back around a bit. it didn't work. So let me get this straight. I can move Pokemon from game to game at will with no caveats, but I'm not actually allowed to organize them how I want in the box? Doesn't that seem, I don't know, redundant to anyone else? Well, that's stupid. I don't really like how they're positioned like this, so for now, I'll just pop Squirtle and Pikachu in another box until I pay for the premium version.
Mr. Squidward! I should kick your fucking ass!
Rather than explode, which is what I'm sure you were all expecting, I'm going to try and give a reasonable explanation as to why this decision is an actively terrible idea. And then later, I'll suggest some slightly more reasonable alternatives. I'm going to play out a possible scenario. Let's say that you've been out of the Pokemon scene since before Gold and Silver were released, but recently your friends have been telling you it's better than ever. Which, if you're a Pokemon fan, you've said that before. Seeing as how you have a 3DS and classic Pokemon games are on there for cheap, why not? You purchase Crystal, and yeah, a shame you never gave it a chance before now. So from there, you take your time to purchase and play through Let's Go Pikachu, Base Game Sword, Brilliant Diamond, and Legends Arceus. There is varying degrees of enjoyment for each game, but long story short, you had fun. Finally, you hear of Pokémon Home and how you can safely store your hard-earned teams on there. But you're pretty low on funds at the moment. I mean, you did drain 240 on Pokemon games, and you did hear that there's a free version, so there's no harm in just not sinking any more money in for now, right? Did you get all that? Good. Let's say that this guy ran with a full team of 6 for each game and wanted to deposit them all into Pokémon Home. So he does. First of all, if only 7 of my Pokemon can be mixed up in a shuffle, then I'd hate to see what happens when you add whole Pokemon teams from different games. It'd be like musical chairs. Good luck trying to make sense out of that bundle of chaos. If I had to guess, I'm assuming that they were grouped based on date caught, but that's a guess, and I'm saying that off script, so I genuinely don't know why they got jumbled. Also, with 4 full teams adding up to 24 Pokemon, this guy only has 6 slots left to deposit any Pokemon of his choosing. And then what happens? Actually, no, scratch that. He only gets 4 slots because you get Pikachu and one of the candle starters for free. And you get even more from mystery gifts. What happens after he passes 30? I'll give the Pokemon Company the benefit of the doubt here and say that any Pokemon that surpasses 30 are not lost. If it's anything like Pokemon Bank, those Pokemon will probably just be on hold until you pay the ransom, which still sucks, but at least you wouldn't lose the Pokemon forever. Listen, 30 slots isn't just unreasonable, it's straight up cruel towards Pokemon fans, and I was gonna pay for the premium version anyway. As of February 2023, there are 905 Pokemon that can be sent to Pokemon Home, and you can only hold 30 Pokemon at a time. Do the math, and you find out that you can only store a maximum of 3.3% of the entire Pokemon roster. That's literal table scraps. In what world is this okay to people? Look, I get it. The maximum amount is $16 for a whole year, and we'll talk about whether or not I think it's worth it soon. But like I said, we're already paying $60 every time we get a new Pokemon game. Some of those not even worth $40. So don't you think that asking for more money every year on top of that is a little gross? I'm not even saying to remove the payment entirely. I'm more than willing to drop cash on something if I feel like I earned my money's worth. All I'm asking is to give people who may not be able to afford it right away a little more wiggle room to work with than the bare bloody minimum. That's pretty much it in terms of the storage. Let's take a quick look at the Pokedex. Oof, Ilka, you might want to change that title to something else. Pokemon fanatics get really testy when someone so much as even hints at that accursed term. Just looking out for you guys. God forbid Game Freak won't help you. The dex this time around is really thought out. There's a section for each region, so rather than having to scroll up and down, just pick the region you want and done. Much easier to sift through. Pretty standard stuff, honestly. I can't say I like how they handled the button mapping, especially left and right on the D-pad, which jumps you forward or back a whole 5 entries. The trigger buttons also take some getting used to, but both of those are not really worth complaining about. Like in Bank, they added every single dex entry for every Pokemon in a collection, which is cool and all, except that half of the entries are the same. Why even give us the option to view both the Let's Go entries for Eevee when both entries are exactly the same? Just group those 2 entries into one slot. Just another nitpick, I fully admit, but I feel like minor changes like this could go a long way for a pleasant experience. Like in Bank, entries for Pokemon are added when you add them to Home. If the Pokemon has more than one form, then you need to send those forms individually depending on the circumstances. Melmetal has a Gigantamax form, but since mine doesn't have that capability, I can't view that entry, nor can I look at its form in my dex. Oh yeah, before I forget, there are these cute little catch goals in the Pokedex where you're tasked to catch Pokemon from certain games and bring them over to Home. I don't plan to do these myself, but if you want some extra quests to help complete your Pokedex, then this is a great way to make progress. Although it's probably not going to be all that helpful until you have access to more boxes. I'm bringing it up now because it is available with the free version. There's really nothing more to it than that. If you've seen the Pokedex in other Pokemon games, then you've seen the one in Home. The difference, however, is that here, it's just simply more convenient, so again, thank you for that, Ilka. There's other applications available on the Switch, but some are locked off to you until you pay the ransom. I also won't go into the logbook for this video, but I appreciate the novelty. Definitely a positive. To recap, using Pokemon Home for free is laughably restricted, and attempting to make the most of it is painful. Only one box capping at 30, and you can't edit any of the placements within it? You can still transfer Pokemon from game to game, and you can bring Pokemon over from Go, but why would you even bother when the odds of losing access thanks to passing 30 continually increases? I can understand taking advantage of this software if you only have 1 or 2 Pokemon games max, but if you're a major Pokemon enthusiast like me or want to take full advantage of what the Pokemon franchise has to offer, then the free version of Home is simply not going to cut it. Don't bother gimping yourself. I suppose the question that everyone wants to know is this: if the peasant version is wet sludge, is the premium version worth it? Well, I promise we'll get to that. But before we do, there's still an entire half of Pokemon Home we need to cover before paying the cash. We need to try Pokemon Home on the mobile. Yup, in case you didn't know, you can also access Pokemon Home on your cell phone by linking accounts, which is what I did, and suggest that you do as well if you're interested. Luckily, you can still link the versions in the free version, so let's take a look. It was only after I experimented with the mobile version when all the pieces started to fit together. The Switch version and the mobile version of Home are two separate but equal halves to one functioning system. The best and quickest way that I can explain is that it's a good idea to use both systems of Home for the most optimal use. Each version has a clear advantage over the other, although if you can only have one, go for the Switch version since only that one can transfer Pokemon around from different Pokemon games. You know, if there was ever a software that really resonated with me,
It would be Pokédex 3D Pro. Even though it was just a Pokédex, it was honestly something I wanted for a while, even rolling into the modern day. A way to view and truly appreciate the Pokemon designs that we've met back in the day and meeting in today's world. Pokemon Bank didn't set out to do that in the first place, but even knowing that, it was still a bit harsh just seeing the pixel sprites being thrown at us, and nothing better than that. When Pokemon Home was released on the Switch, yeah, the HUD was better in every way, but based on how Game Freak advertised the software, I was really praying that we would be able to see our Pokemon with a true visual display, just like we could in Pokédex 3D. Now, if you only have Pokemon Home on your Switch, I'm sure you'd simply shrug, because the viewable profiles are leagues above that of Pokemon Bank provided. And you'd be right. But now, I'm about to talk about how Home works on a cell phone or a tablet. And boy, have I been waiting to talk about this. I mentioned this several times, and I'll say it again. I really would have loved a gallery of sorts in Bank for the Pokemon I worked super hard for, and yeah, we had a better overall experience of that in Pokemon Home for the Switch. But in Pokemon Home for your cell phone, they finally delivered it in a way that I can jive with. Look at this profile! It's the HUD that worked in Pokemon Go, but here, it's improved in every way, for every Pokemon, for every Pokemon game. For once in my life, Pokemon gives me something that I was actually hoping for, and they nailed it! The more I explored these profiles, the more impressed I became. Before you even touch anything, you can see the Pokemon's name, moves, what Pokeball it lives in, all stuff that we've seen before, but then you actually start tapping around, and you learn that you have access to so much more. Tapping the type lets you view a weakness chart for that particular Pokemon. Touching any of its moves will explain more about what each individual move does. Nature reveals what stat the nature is boosting and nerfing, and tapping the species name will jump you to the Pokedex, giving even more juicy information than what we saw on the Switch. Although the text is still the same, but blah 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 details.
Look at this! I can actually view and get a better look at my Raticate's model. It's a tiny and pointless feature, but one that I welcome with open arms and will continue to use forever. Wow, I am a happy boy right now. I would say that I'm not going to go over anything in this game that I already covered on the Switch, but the only similar features between the two versions are the viewable profiles and the Pokédex, and as you can see, even those are different enough to where ignoring them here would be a mistake. I never thought I'd be excited to look through a Pikachu's stats, but Home Mobile made it happen, and I'm not even mad. Everything else about Pokemon Home Mobile is completely different, and I'll briefly explain everything that I have access to. The biggest distinction is the ability to trade Pokemon right from your phone, both with friends and all around the world. I figured I'd be locked out of any trading features while I'm still in the borderline torturous free mode, but shockingly no, I can still trade, even globally. I don't have any Pokemon I'm willing to trade just yet, so I'm gonna wait until I buy the premium service to showcase these options. But if you plan to stay in free mode, you are allowed to use these trading features. Don't be afraid to give them a shot, especially if you registered some friends in your friends list. I would cover the friends list feature here if I could, but I think Brett is still mad at me for bad-mouthing Auraz again. Challenges are pretty straightforward. They're like the Dex quests we saw back on the Switch, but this time it's a much more straightforward mission mode, with pretty specific instructions on what you're supposed to do. Completing a challenge grants you a little sticker, which you can decorate your profile with. I may have spent more time on decorating my profile than I'd like to admit, and I hadn't even gotten any Pokemon-themed stickers yet. Okay, so there's an option here that just says news, and my jaded ass thought it was just going to be a list of Pokemon Home updates. Which it is, but more so, it's actually news for everything Pokemon related. Official tournaments, in-game special events, distribution announcements for everyone, including people in Pokemon Home. It's all here. Point is, if you want to see what's happening in the Pokemon world and prefer to hear it straight from the horsey's mouth, again, it's right here. And again, all of what I just talked about, trading, challenges, Pokemon profiles, even a snazzy version of the Pokédex, all of this is available to use even for free, and that's a wonderful thing! Which loops us back to the question of why the Pokemon Company decided to flip the greedy switch and give free users only one box to work with! Again, you can't even rearrange Pokemon between each other, not even on a cell phone. And to those of you defending this and saying that people who want a few more boxes are just being entitled and should be grateful for at least getting one box, again, I don't care and you do you, but at the same time, please don't rag on people asking for that. What's wrong with you? Do I need to remind you all about what Beat 'em Up said in his Sword and Shield review? Pokemon is the highest grossing franchise. Period. They are swimming in cash and do not need to behave like Yzma when people ask for more reasonable box space. Be grateful that you get one box that you can organize to hold less than 1% of the Pokemon roster! How dare you defend that? Get off your high horse and have some humility. If Game Freak or whoever is responsible wants to be that stingy with their service, then they should just scrap the insulting free version entirely and give its customers plenty of reasons to purchase the subscription. And this is coming from someone who is going to buy the annual service anyway. Okay, so there's one more feature that I want to talk about, and I'm bringing it up here because I didn't know you could do this until I really started digging around the application. You can actually mark Pokemon with multiple labels, similar to how tags work in Pokemon Go. You get much more room to work with than I expected, and if you're stuck with the free version, these labels serve as a pretty nice workaround for grouping Pokemon together, since literally moving them around is impossible. Bonus points for being able to view these labels in the other version too. I actually went back to my Switch to check something and saw that the labels I made for my cell phone stuck around, although you can't edit these labels in the Switch version. Both versions of Pokemon Home have a lot of quality of life features that already make me like it way more than Pokemon Bank. It's just a shame that up until now, I've had to torture myself with the bastardized version that has no business existing. I'm done maiming myself, thank Arceus. As promised, I'm gonna cough up the $16 and finally give Pokemon the ransom money that they demanded. And afterwards, I'll go over Pokemon Home again the way the Holy Helix intended, with more than one bloody box to work with.
It's blank. Now wait a minute.
No more dumbass restrictions! How does Home hold up now? If you want my honest opinion, quite well actually. Well, let's cover everything else that we can do now that I've sold my soul to the Pokemon Company. even though I still viscerally despise many of the executives over there. We couldn't do this until I coughed up the dough, but now I can finally bring over my Pokemon from across time! It's a miracle! I don't want to record any more 3DS footage, so I just took a picture of what I needed to, because I personally had no idea how any of this was going to play out. Put simply, all 100 boxes in Home are laid out in a grid, and you simply pick which boxes you want to transfer. No limits, no restrictions, no time locks. The grid might confuse you at first because it doesn't take into account how you might have organized the order in bank. So at first I got turned around when Pokemon I thought would line up next to each other turned out to be elsewhere in the grid. That being said, all 100 boxes were literally right there, and finding out what Pokemon was where was not hard. Especially if you already had Pokemon you wanted together in 1 or 2 boxes. Obviously, if you need to go back to bank and move your Pokemon around at the last second, you can. It's as simple as that. As I explained before, I had 3 groups in the bank: the complete roster, my original teams, and everyone else. For this transfer, only the decks and the teams are jumping, as well as all of the Pokemon that we've covered in this video. This is it, the final jump. Strap on to something!
As risky as it is for me to be making Ace Attorney references, I think I'll take this one for the team. Look! I know the Earth is round. You can see it right there.
Pokemon Bank had 100 boxes for you to work with, holding 30 slots for each box. And the grand total of boxes for us to work with in Pokemon Home is 200 boxes! Golly Gonzales, that's a lot of boxes!
But the number of boxes you can use means squat if the format system is ass. Does the app flow smoothly? And what I mean is, am I able to organize and sort my Pokemon collection in a comfy and easy manner? Or do I have to jump through hoops to move Pokemon around?
Well, my initial procedure of moving Pokemon to their proper place in Home was pretty simple. It was just a matter of rearranging the boxes to my liking, and that took maybe 10 minutes? I had my complete decks already organized back in the bank, and everyone's placement in their respective boxes hadn't really changed. I simply had to reorder all the boxes, which didn't really take that long since swapping boxes between each other was added this time around, thank Amistar for that. This was all before Home could connect to Gen 9, by the way. I imagine that my opinions on moving individual Pokemon around might actually change for the worse once I decide to sit down and do a hard reset on all my Pokemon placements. I also noticed that there's lag when it comes to switching between boxes depending on how many Pokemon are stored. Alright, so this is a live recording just to show off what I mean by lag, because I realize it's probably really hard to understand when it's just a voiceover. So, as you can see, we're in box space 7 of 7, and I noticed that it has a lot of lag when pretty much every slot is full. So I've got the controller. You're probably not going to be able to hear it, but I'm going to click the button to move to the next spot, and just watch how long it takes. And click. Well, that was what's wonderful, isn't it? And then we're going to move to the next box and click. But that didn't take as long. And click. And click. You can see what I mean, right? And then when you get to the ones with more stuff in it and click, it just takes a while. Not a good look, I'm gonna be honest. I really hope someone fixes that. After that, all I had left to do was rename the boxes. I mean, this is just personal to me, but I thought about it. The aspects of Bank that I didn't like were adjusted, changed, or straight up removed in Home, so I have no grounds to complain there. In my opinion, I really do think this works. It's crazy how much better this application gets once you gain the ability to move Pokemon around how you see fit. And all of this is just regarding the Switch version, where the purpose is to organize them how you want them for the sake of game transferal. The boxes are handled way differently in the mobile version, and that is not a complaint. Here's my opinion of the mobile version. It's actually worth the $16 in my opinion if you have both the Switch and the mobile version of Home. Yes, I actually said that. Okay, now hear me out. Once you actually obtain the ability to customize Pokemon placements in Home, the app becomes so much better. Let's go over all the features that we have now. There was only one feature that Pokemon Bank has over Home, and that was the group system, but the workaround I hinted at before is pretty good for a workaround. Ladies and gentlemen, labels! We talked about labels before, but I want to stress how helpful they are. You can mark up to 100 Pokemon with the same label and create up to 100 different labels. It's a shame that I don't really have a way to truly differentiate my live decks, but I can group everything else. Main teams are all marked with red labels, but still specify what team they came from. Same with Nuzlocke teams with yellow labels. I even marked gift Pokemon with pink labels, and special Pokemon I got in other ways, like from Dream Radar, in green labels. Pretty obvious to tell, but I kinda love this feature. Sorting with colors makes my brain go brr, and seeing these guys categorized like this is so satisfying to me, you guys have no idea. Despite my head telling me not to, I also brought my shiny collection over from Bank. I'm not the biggest fan of shinies, especially nowadays where shiny Pokemon are way easier to farm for, but just to be more organized, I also slapped labels on them too. I'm not gonna gloat about shit that I don't actually care about, but just for giggles, here's 2 shiny Magnemite that I caught in the same game, in the same area, on the same day, within around 30 minutes of each other. I looked around online and apparently the odds of this happening are around 1 in 262,144, if you have the shiny charm. That's funny. Let's go over the trading rooms next. While I am a bit peeved that you can no longer access this feature in actual Pokemon games, at least the global trade station is still a thing. I thought for sure that you could only ask for Pokemon you've already registered in your decks, like all games before now. Not anymore! Now you can ask for any Pokemon you like, and there's even a button to filter for Pokemon you don't have yet. With how easy and seemingly popular Home is, it's not going to be that hard to receive a Pokemon you want, as long as you don't ask for a level 9 or under Reshiram. God, those people sucked! Hey, now that I have the premium version, let's check out the friend trade. Oh well, you don't need friends to do a Wonder Trade. Let's have some fun! Wonderbox is for Wonder Trading, now with more slots to trade at once. Deposit a Pokemon you're willing to give away in one of the slots, and after some time, a completely random Pokemon that someone placed in their own slot will be traded to you. For the record, I love Wonder Trading. It's how I managed to get a Marshadow long before it was distributed in the States. So let's drop some beloved fodder in and see what prizes I receive. The trade isn't immediate, so while we wait, let's do a quick reunion. I've been showing them off for a while, but surprise! It's my main team from Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. The same team that joined me in my duology now live here in Bank. So you know what that means. I finally beat Let's Go Eevee. Jesus Christ, it was so boring. I recorded myself finally clearing the Elite Four to use as filler footage for this video, but my god. Who in their right mind would defend this game as one of the best Pokemon games of all time? Who? It's perfect for kids like my nephew who's having a blast playing it as I record this, but it's not perfect for someone like me. Anyways, most of them are in-game trades, so no nicknames this round, but for my playthrough of Let's Go Eevee we have Raichu, Ninetales, Marowak, my partner Eevee named Evoy, who can't leave the game by the way, my Melmetal named Melty Boy, and most shockingly, my Raticate, who turned out to be my strongest and my ace in the hole. Yep, I was so done with being forced to use only Kanto Pokemon that I took the Alolan knockoff and transformed him into a knockout champion. Definitely the highlight of this 5th romp through Kanto. Welcome home, guys. You've earned a break. Now let's leave Kanto and hopefully not come back for a 6th time. Alright, that was enough time wasted. What did I get for those 3 furfs? Dratini, Oddish, and Murkrow. Not bad at all if I do say so myself. Hey, let's do it again! Oh god, this is how addictions start.
Something else that I want to touch on briefly is the compatibility we have with Pokemon Go. Now, obviously, how stats work in Go is way different than how it works anywhere else, so when you make that one-way trip from Go to Home, you're essentially refurbishing its stats to be usable in the core games.
I wasn't sure about the specifics myself, so I wanted to test how much is kept when a Pokemon makes that transfer. So I booted up Pokemon Go and caught the first thing that appeared outside my house. Alright, it's a Morello. 178 CP, knows Astonish and Dazzling Gleam. And according to Spark, it sucks. My god. Alright, let's pop this little creature into Home and examine its stats there. Alright, so from what I can tell, the stats re-roll when you transfer it, because in Home, this Morello suddenly has slightly better stats. I guess. It lost Dazzling Gleam, but kept Astonish and now knows Absorb and Confuse Ray. I checked Cerebi, and those are the moves it would normally have given its level. So I guess the only thing that stayed the same was the species itself.
So I guess the lesson here is that if you have an absolute unit in Go, it might not be one anymore if you transfer it over from Go to Home. Alrighty then. How are the Pokemon I put in the Wonder Box doing?
Oh wow, I didn't get any legendaries or Pokemon that I didn't have before, but I did get a shiny. Let's take a look. Oh, whoa.
A level 64 shiny Grotle with a hidden ability, perfect IVs, max EVs, 7 different ribbons, and only one move. Protect. What?
I'm sure there are some words to describe the situation regarding this wacky goon of a Pokemon, but those words are not reaching me. Well, let's end this whole trading game on a silly note. Bye-bye, Morello. Thanks for helping me with my video. I made lots of jokes, but I genuinely do think this service is worth $16 a year.
I definitely didn't think Bank was worth the money for what it offered, but I still enjoyed using it, and by the time this video is uploaded, it's gonna be free.
Pokemon Home, however, is a completely different ballgame. The premium gives us a lot to sink our teeth into, and when you combine both the Switch and the mobile version, you get the feeling that you really are a full-fledged Pokemon trainer in real life. My 7-year-old nephew was playing Let's Go Eevee on the telly, and he asked me if I beat the game myself. When I told him that my Raticate of all Pokemon wiped the champion's team off the floor, and then showed him my Raticate from my cell phone, the kid was absolutely amazed, and I was filled with glee as any bum that was bragging to his nephew about Pokemon would.
The point is, Pokemon Home is really good. I have many problems with Game Freak and the Pokemon Company as a whole, as I'm sure most of you picked up throughout this video. But, as far as I'm concerned, I cannot help but love this app.
That being said, I wouldn't transfer every single one of your Pokemon from Bank to Home, especially if you still play Gen 6 and 7 games. At least not until Pokemon releases a game that lets you use all Pokemon, I don't know, like a Battle Revolution 2 or something. But putting that aside, if you have Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Let's Go, or Sword, or Shield, or even if you own these, for whatever reason, you will not be let down with Pokemon Home. Just don't waste your time with the free version. Either pay the ransom or don't bother. The basic plan in Pokemon Home is the equivalent of getting a free game for being the 100th customer of the day, but that game is like Warriors All-Stars or something. Yeah, it does what it sets out to do, but at what cost? Not to mention, one of the best features of Pokemon Home, especially for mobile, is the complete Pokédex, but how are you supposed to complete that and make use of it with only 30 Pokemon available to you at a time? This is the definitive Pokédex that surpasses all others offered to us hands down, but it's not even worth it unless you have Pokemon to use it with.
Pokemon fans on both sides of the metaphorical wall, whether you're a casual enjoyer or a die-hard elite, I implore you, please consider Pokemon Home. It is one of the most valuable tools you could ever hope to obtain during your quest to become a Pokemon master. And I'm serious when I say that. Just don't use the free version. You'll hate it.
Yeah, baby!
So it turns out that waiting half a year on video so you can finish school can have its benefits. Because between when I first started production on this video to where I am now, accessibility to both Legends Arceus and Generation 9 has finally come for us. I do have a few things I want to say about it. Real quick though, there are a lot of moments in this section in particular where I'm just kind of explaining things and not really any footage I can use can really be of use here. So honestly, I think I'm just going to start sprinkling in the profiles of Pokemon that I transferred over both during this video and the transfer tour. So hope you guys are fine with that.
First, and most importantly, what the banana, Game Freak? What took so long in getting first Legends Arceus to connect to Home, and then later on in the timeline, Scarlet and Violet? I couldn't help but notice that you took long enough for some Pokemon trainers to actually make YouTube videos talking about it. Many did this, but I in particular watched a few made by Linky, and you know what? He made a good point. Obviously, I'm not going to relay every single thing that he said in his video. I'll have the link in the description for you, but I'll be quick. Most of us are paying for this service on an annual, if not monthly basis. Why on this planet made by Arceus should we have to wait half a damn year to finally be able to transfer a Pokemon from Legends Arceus to Home? Okay, fine. Maybe to most people, 3.5 months isn't that long of a wait. Although I'd still argue that us paying for this service moots that point, but again, fine. 3.5 months is borderline acceptable, especially when you do factor in that ILCA is actually a small indie developer. So explain to me in which parallel universe is 6.5 months acceptable. And don't even get me started on that, we put the cart before the Mudsdale tweet. Yeah, I know that the update was released only 5-ish days after that initial date was announced, but how many times do we have to get yanked on a leash before we're allowed to lose our tempers? We're paying a subscription for this service, and this, let's face it, $1 million franchise suddenly can't handle something that they've been able to handle for 27 years?
And yet I'm the bad guy for being salty. I just gave perhaps one of the most glowing positive spins of Pokémon Home on this side of the internet, but no. I'm still the bad guy and I need to shut up because Game Freak is a small indie company and they make high quality games with high quality animation. Screw this, I'm taking a nap.
I'm not here to talk about the complications that came during and after Scarlet and Violet's release. There are other YouTubers who've done a much better job covering that than anything I could ever achieve, and I suggest watching them if you want to know more. Instead, I'll stick to just what it means for Pokémon Home, pathetically unacceptable release date aside. Seeing as how Legends Arceus was pretty much the biggest reason why I got Pokémon Home in the first place, I took a little bit of time experimenting with anything new that may have been added. And once the update for Gen 9 came out, I finally began to move Pokemon around, since I did finally play Scarlet for myself. Honestly, not much changed other than the expanded roster in Home, but I did notice something pretty important, at least when I began to move between games. Pokemon moves. I have the Sliggoo that I've been moving from game to game for a little while now. In Legends, it knows these moves. But when I moved it over to Scarlet... No. I double-checked the mobile version too, just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Is this a joke? In Pokemon Bank, the moves you taught it were the moves it had. If your Typhlosion had the move Extra Sensory when it was in black and white, guess the banana what? It would still have Extra Sensory in X and Y, in Sun and Moon. I think you get the point. It felt more like your Pokemon really were coming with you no matter where you went. Meanwhile, in Pokemon Home, it seems that every Pokemon will have different movesets for every game you use, completely shattering the illusion that Pokemon Home was going for in the first place. Remember how when we transferred that Morlul into Home, its moveset changed? I only thought that was because Pokemon Go's combat system was radically different. You know, this shit? Well, it turns out that was a wrong assumption. This happens every time you transfer. In general. Egg and Move Tutor moves too? Right out the window. Here, have the default moveset that you would have had based on your current level. You know what you could have done to avoid having to program all these extra movesets for every single Pokemon ILCA? If Game Freak had just taken the time to reprogram these moves in a post-release patch. Remember when you received that special event Darkrai with both Spatial Rend and Roar of Time back in Diamond and Pearl? Remember how you moved it from Diamond to Black? Remember how you moved it from Diamond to Black all the way to Ultra Sun? Remember how awesome you felt? Yeah, maybe don't send that Darkrai to Home. It may lose those moves and be replaced with moves that it would have at that level.
Wow, ruining event Pokemon with special moves by straight up rendering those special moves unavailable in Home? Classic Game Freak!
Now, to be completely fair, something I haven't mentioned up until now is that when a Pokemon is sent from one game to another, their movesets from both games are actually saved within a hidden record in Home. The thing is, this was the first time I actually moved Pokemon from one game to another. Before this, I only brought my live decks from Bank and select few Pokemon from Legends Arceus, and I didn't even bother moving any Bank Pokemon to Hisui. It was around this time when a chill was sent down my spine as I asked myself a question. When I transferred all of those Pokemon from Bank to Home,
Were all the moves of those Pokemon reset to basic? Now, I myself have a few event-exclusive moves on Pokemon from Bank that I brought to home without even thinking about it, and I admittedly panicked a little and looked through my Pokemon. For one of these Pokemon, I actually possess a Vivillon with the move Hold Hands, so I checked its summary to see if the move was gone, and... oh, there it is. Hold Hands. A useless move in battle, but one that I'd never want Vivillon to lose. So that theory is busted. Pokemon moves are saved in the system of Home, including the moves of Pokemon brought from past games. But wait a minute. I definitely remember my Hawaiian Raticate having a blank stat screen when I first downloaded the software. So I went back to check, and this is what I found. So clearly that was a part of the Gen 9 update, and before that update, moves appeared to have been hidden if the Pokemon wasn't coded into any of the available games yet. At least, that's how it was according to you guys. So, I did a little experimenting. First, I went all the way back to my Sapphire version to see if I can recall what moves my Pokemon had when I transferred them. Nope, not even in the Hall of Fame. Then I remembered that I literally showed those Pokemon off in Pokemon Bank, and then I checked the footage from my Transfer Tour video. Here are the moves Castform had in Bank. Here are the moves Castform had when I first transferred it to Home. And finally, here is what it looks like now. Even the stats are the same. I think it's safe to say that this myth is busted. Pokemon Home does not outright replace moves, and all moves that it had are saved, even if you have to use different moves in different games.
This doesn't give me any hope for future Pokemon games including all the moves again, but at the very least we're allowed to keep those moves in Home, so I'll take that.
The fuck is this? What got removed? How about no? My Floatzel from the Ultra Wormhole is gonna keep Scald, thank you very much. Bite me. Hey, Post-Edit Ed here, about to rant his goddamn head off. So I was editing this part of the video, you know, as someone who edits videos does, and I came across quite the discovery. Another one to drive me up a wall. Right now you're watching unedited footage of one of the earlier shots that I used, specifically the part where I look at Vivillon's stats on Home. So I was double checking research on the move Hold Hands on Bulbapedia, and according to the website, the move appears to be coded into the game. Or games, whatever, they're the same game to me. So I thought, cool, I'll put Vivillon with Hold Hands into Scarlet so I can show you guys what it looks like. Well, it turns out it doesn't work, because at the end of the day, I still had to remove Hold Hands if I wanted to put Vivillon into the game. What the hell, Game Freak? Why even give us event Pokemon if we're not allowed to fucking use them in the first place? And it's not just Hold Hands, there are other moves that are doing this too, normal moves. My Typhlosion knows Burn Up, and it's not allowed to use Burn Up. Pokemon Home? Pfft, more like Pokemon Military. Look the same, talk the same, behave the same way, have the same goddamn Pokemon as everyone else. You're not allowed to have the Pokemon that you used to have when you were younger, the ones that you grew up with. It's a good thing that Pokemon are allowed to keep the moves that they had after transferring from Bank because, oh my god, I would have been livid. Yeah, I know, I'm livid right now, and I know that it could have been way worse, but... oh, okay, look, I'm sorry, I'm genuinely mad, but I am sorry. It's just, why is Game Freak doing this? Why do they have so much contempt towards their fan base? I grew up with Pokemon. Am I just supposed to walk away from it? That's what they want me to do.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Oh yeah, I didn't really have an opportunity to mention this until now, but moving Pokemon from certain games into Home nets you some rewards in the mobile version. I got a Pichu just for playing with the stickers. Here's what my binder looks like nowadays, by the way. I got a Melmetal for bringing over that Morolol and a few other Pokemon from Go. Oh shit, this thing can Gigantamax? Neat. A shame that I don't ever plan to Gigantamax this thing, yikes to that. I got an Oshawott, Rowlet, and Cyndaquil for bringing Pokemon from Legends Arceus. And on the same vein, I got Fuecoco, Quaxley, and Sprigatito for doing the same thing with Scarlet. Finally, I got an Eevee for... wait, why did I get this Eevee again? Oh right! It's because I threw all those Pokemon into the Wonder Box. Well, I love Eevee, so yes please.
I think that about covers all the small stuff. That was Pokemon Home. As shocking as this is to say, despite the controversy, despite the very real and obvious problem of the
disputed digital division.
If you play the modern Pokemon games a lot, if you had fun with Legends Arceus, and I'll even say it, if you had fun with Scarlet and Violet, I genuinely recommend paying $16 a year for Pokemon Home. Is it perfect? No. Does it feel like a place for Pokemon to feel right at home? Absolutely damn not. But Is it better than Pokemon in every single way, possess an astounding viewable gallery, and let you transfer Pokemon back and forth between almost every single Pokemon game on the Switch? Oh my lordy, yes it does. I think that's worth repeating. With Let's Go being the exception, fuck Kanto anyway, you can move Pokemon from Gen 8 to Gen 9, and if you wanted to, you can move those Pokemon back from Gen 9 to Gen 8. We've gone full circle. I wasn't planning on this duology to do this, but here we are. Look at this wheel. I've bashed Ilka and Game Freak a lot here today, but this, I have to commend them for what we have at the very least. Don't get the wrong idea. The Pokemon Company have been really dropping the ball. I can understand wanting to target kids for your franchise, I genuinely really do. But treating your older fan base like they're a disease on your brand, cutting corners to save time and effort, while also nickel and diming that same dedicated fan base with DLC and shitty spin-offs like Unite. Screw that notion, and also screw the Dex cut in case I haven't made that clear with these two videos. But back to the positives before I lose my patience. Pokemon Home is getting better. When I have a 7-year-old nephew and a 4-year-old niece who have the time of their lives just scrolling through my collection and viewing all the Pokemon that I've collected throughout my entire life, what is now compiling my live decks, that's how you obtain new fans for your franchise, Game Freak. Let them enjoy the now 1,000 monsters and let them catch, raise, and train the Pokemon team of their dreams. Stop limiting us. I wasn't supposed to say that last part, but that was probably the best take I'll ever make. I fucking hate my life. I hate this shit. Listen, I've said a lot here today. I've made a lot of funny faces. I've screamed a lot, but this one's purely from the heart. I actually enjoy Pokemon Home. I'm not joking. I actually really do like it. If you are enjoying Legends Arceus, if you're enjoying Scarlet and Violet, hell, I had a few fun bouts with Scarlet and Violet. I won't deny it. If you are having a blast playing Pokemon, no matter your age, or even if you are having a major issue with Game Freak like I am, it doesn't matter. I urge you to try out Pokemon Home. I promise you, you won't regret it. That was all. That last part was ad-lib, by the way. I didn't even read the script. I didn't even look down to look at the script. That was pure from the heart. If you're enjoying Pokemon, Pokemon Home is worth it. Why the fuck do I do this to myself? God damn it. You're coming too. Come on, Bronzong.
Speaking of Pokédexes, some of you more eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that I host quite the collection of Pokémon. I have what most people like to call a live Pokédex, where I obtained at least one of every species at my disposal, including evolutions. For example, I have one Oshawott, one Duat, one American Samurott, and lastly one Hokkaidan Samurott, all next to each other in the boxes, as well as multiple forms for Pokemon such as all 7 forms of Minior. Up to Generation 7, I had every single Pokemon available at the time, and I was quite proud of it. However, with the passage of time comes the complications that come with being a Pokemon master. More Pokemon games means more Pokemon to collect, but as I'm sure you all can predict me saying, I don't buy games if I don't think they're worth the asking price. Legends Arceus? Worth every cent of that $60 price tag. Okay, the graphics aren't perfect, but I still had a blast playing it. Sword and Shield? As far as I'm concerned, not even worth $40, and I'm not paying $30 on top of that for bonus content, especially if an argument can be made that the content should have been in the base game, even if that bonus content is agreed by most to be amazing.
This is a nitpick, and I know I'm gonna be a nitpicky asshole on this one, but he's sleeping. Put him on the ground!
Yeah. Yeah, fuck you, Leon!
So, I guess if I want to complete my live decks, I'm a little stuck, huh? I'm not dropping money on a lackluster title, so I guess for now the only option I have is to ask friends to help me out, whether it be trading or the like. Not to mention Scarlet and Violet are already out now, and as you all saw, I have already transferred some Gen 8 Pokemon from Paldea, such as Sinistea and Poltegeist. Also, Pokemon Go is an option. I don't care if people say that's cheating, I use the tools that I have access to, and honestly, I still have small bouts of fun with Go every now and then.
But I suppose for now, since I don't want to have to pay for a ticket to come to the Galar region, I'm just going to have to take that big fat L on my Pokedex. Nothing I can really do about that. Well, I think I've said all that needs to be said. If you like what you saw, please consider purchasing Pokémon Home. I'm not going to say to buy it, because as I've explained before, everyone has different amounts of money, and what you decide to purchase is only up to you, and no one else. Now then, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm going to complete some Pokedex quests of my own. See if I can't catch a Zarude out in that jungle out there. The one Galar Pokemon I actually decide to get on my own. Well, until next time, guys. Peace! But I suppose for now, since I don't want to have to pay for a ticket to come to the Galar region, I'm just going to have to take that big fat L on my Pokedex.
Well, well, well. Not coming to the Galar region, eh? We'll see about that, Beanie Boy. Zamazetta, watch the forest for me. I'm gonna participate in some divine intervention.